Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to, hopefully learn something. Welcome to parenting yourself while being a parent. I'm really grateful you've taken the time for you. Although the bulk of my work with altered healing is really about supporting folks in the psychedelic space, I'm just also grateful to kind of offer some education on this like more earthly plane. So let's just dive in to what we're speaking about this evening. So we're going to be talking about the joys of parenthood, and although it is definitely one of the most rewarding things that I have experienced, it can also be quite overwhelming. As a parent myself, I definitely struggle with staying grounded. And now that summer's here and the little kiddo is home, trying to find a balance of getting things done and also making and finding time with him makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. I don't know if that's something you can maybe also relate to. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to offer support for all of us parents. And so by the end of this talk, I'm hoping you'll be able to have a better understanding of what overwhelm can feel like for you, how it can manifest, and why our children trigger us so much. And then some techniques that are going to help us stay grounded that are proven to work and hopefully just really allow us to land better in the experience so we can be more present to our youngins. So I'm Angela. I have a background in psychotherapy. I'm the founder of Altered Healing and the main psychedelic guide. I've been working with clients for over 10 years. I really enjoy the psychoeducation space just because I think it's so important to teach us things that maybe we didn't even know we didn't know. And this is a gentler way to kind of step into sometimes the therapeutic realm. When I first started doing courses, I was often working with older women who really had never really given enough time for themselves. And so self care became a really big part of what I was teaching and how I was supporting folks. And although my own self care practices has been a journey, I really do believe that self care is essential. And so I'm hoping you'll be able to find some ways to incorporate the things that we learned this evening into your own life. So, what does it actually mean to be a parent? This photo really demonstrates like this idea of the nuclear family, a man, a woman, two and a half children. The man worked all day, the woman stayed at home, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the children. However, just keeping a house clean and cooking is kind of a 40-hour job. And so kids didn't really get that full attention that maybe we try to give them now. So if we want to be attentive and responsive parents, that 1950s ideal just really isn't realistic. The 40-hour work week of like trying to have a job, trying to be a attentive, responsive parent, and trying to cook and clean, there literally are not enough hours in the day. And so this ideal that kind of we're looking at here and that a lot of folks might have in their head is kind of fantasy. It's not realistic. Women and children were not really treated as equals. And sometimes though we have these imaginary ideals that are stuck in our head. And if we're striving for these things, then burnout can be inevitable. And so it's good to ask yourself, like, what type of parent do you want to be? What type of parent would you like to be recognized as? And if it's this picture, then it's actually probably not possible. And if we do want to be a good parent to our children, then we have to take care of ourselves. And so I've always loved the analogy of putting your oxygen mask on first. So again, air hostess, you're on a plane and they say, if something happens, the air mask will drop down and you have to put yours on first before assisting anyone else because otherwise you will suffocate. And it's the same in our everyday life. If we're not taking care of ourselves first, what's going to happen? We are not getting the things we need, so we can't help those around us. So just keeping in mind, like, what type of parent do you want to be, and how can you incorporate things that are positive and beneficial for your own well-being while also being this parent? So, one of the things that can make parenting so difficult is that we can get so triggered by our children. Is there anyone else that can get a reaction out of us quicker? I do not think so. And so part of that is often because of our own childhood issues that may be unresolved. So we may have had difficult things happen to us when we were younger, and now we're witnessing these little mirrors of ourselves, and that can bring up a lot. So our children sometimes might not show gratitude for all that they have. They may actually demonstrate traits that we got in trouble for at the time. And so we're then having a reaction and kind of continuing this cycle. If you're curious about your own inner child getting activated, a really simple thing you can ask yourself is, what age do I feel? And this is a helpful way. If you're having a big reaction to something, you kind of just pause, or even if you reflect back, it's like, what age do I feel? And if it's not the age you are now or not an adult age, then it's often probably your inner child that's actually being activated in the moment. And that's a good question to ask with interactions in any relationship, any situation where you feel like you're having this big reaction, but especially around family members, they seem to have this way of just being like terrible time machines where we're just drawn to this other time for ourselves. And so being aware of this is important, especially when we're with children, because it can get triggered in a very big way. Another thing that can indicate that maybe your inner child needs a little healing is if you find you have a really critical inner voice. You may be a perfectionist. Those are kind of things that are often coming from this inner child that's a bit wounded. The perfect parent does not exist. However, we may have just needed more from our caregivers. Maybe they did the best they could, but it wasn't enough. And so as the adult, we kind of recognize like, oh, they did all they could and I should just be grateful. But the inner child can sometimes be a little hurt. And so this is when we need to spend a little bit of time trying to heal this part of ourselves. And so how do we do that? We can do fun things like make a mess. It's like there's lots of ways we can connect with our inner child, but things that really connect to something for us. So, I know you will have to clean the said mess that you make, but try not to think about that at the time. Be like a kid in the moment and do something that connects to that part of yourself. Maybe do something you weren't allowed to do, like within reason, maybe watch a TV show you weren't allowed to watch, put your elbows on the table, things like that, stuff that maybe you were not allowed in your household at all. Another simple way we can start kind of communicating with our inner child or healing it is journaling or writing a letter and allowing yourself to connect to this part of yourself. So, again, if something maybe difficult or overwhelming happened to you when you were 6, and now you have a 6-year-old, you may be getting a lot of overwhelming feelings because of that particular age. So, sit down and you can now be that safe space for little you. You are now the caregiver and the adult. So, you can speak to that part of yourself the same way you would speak to your own children in a very gentle, loving, open way. Arts and crafts can be a fun way. I did an arts therapy certificate once, and someone was there and they couldn't do work with clay. They started and it just brought up so much emotion. So things like that that like connect us to this other part of self can be really healing because we're really exploring how we can connect to this part, this like younger part of ourselves, and allow them to be heard and be seen. We can look at old photos. So ideally find like a happy memory. Those are usually the pictures we have, and sit with it. And my own therapist had recommended, because this is something she does, and that she would sit down at the table with a picture of herself and would just speak again very kindly and reminisce. And so that can be like a really healing way to connect to that part of ourselves and do a little bit of work with, you know, little less. So summer is here, school is out, and we have the societal expectations. We have our own expectations on ourselves. We might have a little bit of past trauma. We have work, we have life. All of it can add up. And now it's summertime. And so our routines changed, things are out of whack, and it can feel like it's a lot. I remember when I was pregnant and people would ask like, well, when do you have do you have them on a daycare list? Like, what are you going to do when you go back to work? And are they on the waiting list? And a bit naively, I was like, this is just a problem for babies. And it's like, now I wish someone had said like, what are you going to do when they're in school and there's a sick day? Or what are you going to do in the summertime? Again, we don't need to overwhelm pregnant people anymore. However, it wasn't something that I had put a lot of time or thought into. And now that summers are here, it really can add a lot to our plate. And so it's just about knowing like, how is it that you feel about summertime? Are you, I mean, you're here listening, so there's probably some sense of overwhelm. But we can have this real mix of like so excited to spend time with our children and also knowing that we have life and experience and all these other things that we need to balance. And that can lead to overwhelm. And overwhelm manifests very differently for all of us. We can all relate to this feeling. However, the way that it manifests for us in our being is very difficult to kind of to pinpoint sometimes. So it's more about noticing how overwhelm manifests and recognize that we're actually not just managing overwhelm for ourselves. If we have tiny humans, we're also managing the overwhelm for them. And this can lead to parental burnout. So this has been a thing for a long time. However, it's only really was kind of highlighted when COVID happened and parents were totally overwhelmed. 66% of parents are struggling with parental burnout. And so that's when the stress of parenting and the exhaustion of it just gets to a point that it's really impeding our daily function and it's stressful. All of these triggers kind of get to the point where it's just feeling like it's a lot. And so when we get to this overwhelm, it's important to notice how it manifests for you. And so there's different ways that it can manifest. It can be in our thinking, it can be in our emotions, it can be in our physical reactions. And it's just, I want to kind of highlight how it is for you because what we don't know, we can't change. And so awareness really is the first step to healing. So the first thing we might recognize is our thinking is different. We've got brain fog. We're going over the negative. We're in this worried phase. We're catastrophizing, which means we're going to the worst case scenario. Someone's running late. It's like car accident. Didn't answer the text. They're in a fire. Like just going to the worst case and then being very negative about it. So the thinking is gotten to a place where it's very negative. And it's about noticing these might be the things that have just kind of started, for example. Maybe you are not always this way, but you're noticing like, ooh, I'm definitely thinking much more negative. I'm getting to the place where things are in a more negative realm in my mind. Then our emotions change. So for women, it's also important to note that hormone changes can impact our emotions, our thinking, our physical, all of these. So it's just about noting, is this something that happens a week, a month, or are all of these changes have been gradually happening over time? So the mood changes, crying easily. I mean, who's been there? It's more the biggest indicator that we're really feeling overwhelmed, these. However, really getting angry or resentful if you are asked to do something. Because we're having a very strong reaction to that because our nervous system doesn't feel like it can hold one more thing. And so this indicates that our boundaries might need to change or that we might need extra support. We've got to the point that overwhelm is just like someone, hey, can you do this? It's like, no. It's like, okay, sorry, I asked. It's just letting us know, like, oh, how come I'm having such strong reactions? It's like, you're probably getting to a point of overwhelm. And then we also have physical reactions. So this would be in the body. I feel a lot in my body, so I can relate to a lot of this. The upset stomach. This can be caused by anxiety, or we may have started turning to poor eating habits because we're run down. So we might be grabbing the quick fixes, the fast food, junk food. Our nervous system is exhausted. So even when we're sleeping, we're actually not feeling rested. So that exhaustion or fatigue that you're experiencing in the body, it's like, I don't understand what's wrong. I slept 10 hours last night. And that's because your nervous system has actually gotten to a point of exhaustion. And that is, again, an indicator. You've just gotten very overwhelmed, and we're going to figure a way to kind of like get you back to feeling grounded. Sometimes when we're feeling in this space, we increase our alcohol or other drug consumption just because it numbs what it is we're experiencing. It's a quick fix. And the problem is like, what is the cost then? So we're grabbing that bottle of wine on the way home, being like, this will do it. And then you feel terrible the next day and can't do anything you had. So it's just about noticing how these different things can manifest for us. We may also self-soothe in a way that's unhealthy. That can just be, again, the things we're eating, the things we're consuming, or even just like the endless scroll on the phone. We can't seem to stop. It's just a way to numb. And then the impaired immune system. It's like if we're run down, our thoughts are racing, our emotions are just seem to be all over the place, and our body doesn't feel good. It's too much to hold. And so we end up getting really sick often. And so we have all this, then we're feeling overwhelmed. And then our kids are also feeling overwhelmed because the strongest nervous system in the room wins. And they are going to mirror your mood, your experience, everything. So now that we've just gone through so much overwhelm, please take a nice deep breath because it doesn't have to stay like we can do anything, but we cannot do everything. And it's a lot to hold, it's a lot to be with. And we put a lot of expectations on ourselves as parents and society, especially if we're looking at these like norms that we think we're supposed to strive towards. We have to be aware of the shoulds, the comparisons, perfectionism, maybe those parts of the inner child that are still manifesting today, or just things that we feel like, the way we're supposed to be. And being a parent, again, being a perfect parent certainly doesn't exist. And we just need to be good enough at responding, good enough to balance all the things that life demands and our children. So I want you to take a moment and just take a breath. And I'd like you, like, nice deep breath in, exhale out. If you're comfortable, you can just pause where you are, maybe close your eyes or just like gently lidded. And I just want you to bring to mind an ideal summer's day when you were a kid. What is it you notice? What was it that made it memorable? What made your summer fun? Like, why do you have and why do we all have such nostalgia for that part in our lives? And just breathing with those happy memories if you can connect to them. And opening your eyes. And I remember playing at the lake I grew up on, going to the beach, time with friends, times with family. But all of that, those memories are feelings and they're not things. I remember I had this client in Dublin and she came from very little money and she always tried to provide more for her family. And she put herself down for really not providing enough. But she recalled her favorite summer days. And her and her family, I don't even think they had a car. They'd get on the bus and they would go to the seaside and they'd spend the day there. And at the end of the day, they'd go and they'd get a thing of chips, like French fries, and they'd share it between them because that was all they could afford. They had so little, and only as the adult she could really recognize, like, wow, we had so little. But those memories were so precious to her and made her so happy and so full of joy because they were all together and they were in the moment. So, how do we move past the overwhelm and be in the moment with our children? That's where some skills come in. So, we want to be present to our children, but we're too overwhelmed. And that's okay. Of course, we are. There's a lot going on, but we need to figure out ways to get us centered. So, luckily, I have an app for that. And I have some DBT skills that will help us. So stands for dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's actually a research-based kind of model of therapy where we learn new skills and techniques that help make life worth living. It's a dialectic because it really holds the idea that two things can be true at once. So we can believe we're doing our best and want to be better, or we can really believe that, assume that everyone is also trying their best and assume the best intentions for people and also believe in making boundaries. And so we can figure out how, for example, we can want to be there for our children and also figure out how do we do that while having time for ourselves. So, first, I mentioned an app. The app is attention, presence, and positivity. So, we aren't cruise directors. It's not our job to just shower our kids with gifts all the time. And we don't have to always be entertaining them. However, we really ideally need to give them some everyday, real attention, presence, and positivity. So, it's important to know, like, what is it that's blocking you from being present? What's stopping you from like turning on this app and just really being with your child, someone you're taking care of that's also a tiny human? For starters, usually we need to put our phones away. There's been this generation of kids and kind of the one before it that has experienced proximal abandonment. Parents have been in close proximity, however, they haven't been there because they have also been overwhelmed and engaged in their own phones. So it's so frustrating. We're trying to talk to someone and they're on their phones. So kids notice that and then they distance themselves. So figure out an appropriate time where you're not with your phone and you can really give presence to the child of any age. If they're older, it's about going for a walk. I mean, if they're younger too, but it's kind of figuring out like what's age appropriate for them and doing something where you're just with them. And really, the thing that's joyful and connecting is just going with their bits. So, like when I walk with my son, I'd be like, let's be ninjas. I'm like, great, I am a ninja. What ninja am I again? I'm going to be whatever. And then we go with that. Or it's like at a restaurant, he loves to pretend he's a waiter. And so then he's the waiter. And so it's really using like improv rules. Yes, and we don't say no unless, safety is an issue or we're trying to foster fun and wonder and connection. And these are things that don't have to cost anything, just a bit of time and a bit of attention. And so using this kind of attention and presence and positivity, it leads to play and play will lead to joy. And joy is the opposite of overwhelm. So even if we can just do that for a few minutes, that's wonderful. So now I want to speak about some tip skills. So this is again DBT. And so tip skills are, yeah, I don't know if you can see that because of the video. So I'll just tell you what it is. But it's really about changing your body chemistry quickly to reduce the effects of an overwhelmed emotional mind. So these skills really help us from we've got our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're overwhelmed, our sympathetic nervous system just carries these signals to all parts of our body and tells us that we need to be in high alert. We go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We're overwhelmed. The parasympathetic nervous system is the thing that tells our body to relax, that we're okay, that we're safe. And so these skills are really about, again, changing our body chemistry quickly and allowing it to get back to being grounded. So especially if we're overwhelmed in our thoughts, overwhelmed in our emotions, or overwhelmed in our physical body, these are ways that we can actually allow ourselves to land and to ground in our body. And these are quick and easy, and you'll be able to apply them really at any point during the day. And there are things that you can teach your kids too. So when they're starting to feel overwhelmed, you can say, like, oh, looks like you're in your emotional mind. We need to get into our body. And so these are just skills that I wish I would have known when I was younger, and I'm grateful that I have them now. So the first tip, we've got tea. And so this is for temperature, specifically cold water. So we want to tip our temperature because usually we're feeling when we're overwhelmed, we're overheating. And so very simply, all you need to do is you've heard the phrase like you should go splash some cold water on your face. That's kind of what we're doing. So we are going to get either a bowl of ice water or cold water. You can either get a Ziploc bag with ice cubes or you can just fill a sink. And what you do is I have here, so you pull it back, you take a breath, and then you'll hold your breath and you'll put it into the cold water for 10 to 30 seconds. You come out. So what this does is this actually activates the dive response, and it, as if you were under very cold water, and it sends signals to your body that all your heart needs to slow down and that the blood flow to all non-essential organs is restricted and it just goes to the brain and heart. And so basically the panic you were feeling, your body like, oh, things have gotten serious. Let's connect to body. So it's really simple. You can again do it in anywhere that there's cold water. And it can just be, you might have to do it once or twice, depending on how overwhelmed you are. But it's a really great thing just to get yourself back into your body. Maybe you're like, I do not like cold water and I am not into it. Intense exercise is another thing that you can do. And so this again calms you down when you're revved up by emotions. We need to just kind of move the body's stored up physical energy by running, walking, jumping, playing basketball, lifting weights. Basically, we just need to get rid of the energy that's stuck inside of our bodies. So every time maybe you've seen a nature show where like a gazelle is being chased by a lion and then it gets away and it like just shakes it out. You can see it shaking all over its body. It's getting rid of that pent up energy. In those moments of overwhelm, our body also believes it is being chased by a lion. It needs to shake out all that is being pent up inside of it. So intense exercise can be a great way to do that. You're like, I don't really feel like I'm completely exhausted. I do not feel like intense exercise. Like, okay, I hear you, no problem. We're just going to focus on breathing. So paced breathing where you breathe very slowly and deeply, and we're going to do it, but into your belly through your nose. And the whole thing is when we're breathing out, we breathe out more slowly than we've inhaled. So usually we will inhale in for 5 seconds and then we exhale out for 7 seconds. Very simple, very straightforward, but we do want to be breathing into our belly. So often when we're breathing, we breathe just into our chest and it's just not deep enough. So I'd like you to practice it. So you can be standing, you can be sitting, ideally hand on belly so that you can feel it expand. So I'll count. So we'll inhale for 5, exhale for 7. So you're ready and inhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, inhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale. 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. If we can breathe, we're not being chased by a lion. So this paced breathing is a way that can really relax us and keep us feeling much more in our bodies. And again, if we're feeling overwhelmed, we're probably not taking nice, slow, deep breaths. And sometimes when we start breathing deeply, tears come out, and that's okay too. We're just holding a lot. And so sometimes we really need to focus back on our breath. So we tip the temperature, we do some intense exercise, or maybe we don't. We do some paced breathing. Then the last one is paired muscle relaxation. So this is a great one that can be done with kids, can be done really anywhere, again, like all of these. And it's really about trying to tense our muscles to actually release the tension that's held in the body. Sometimes with like meditation and mindfulness, we're trying to like let go of tension, but sometimes it's good to like actually really tense up in order to let it go. So we'll tense up and then we'll release it. And while we're doing it, we're going to be taking again slow, deep breaths into the belly. You can pair it with the paced breathing. So you're inhaling for 5 and exhaling for 7. And when you're exhaling or when you're releasing, we'll be saying relax. So I'm going to do it with you now. It's very straightforward, and I can kind of send an outline of this to you after. But we're going to start with just the hands and wrists. So all we're going to do is we're going to squeeze, but not enough to like give you a cramp. We don't need to do that intensely. But basically, we are going to squeeze our hands into fists, and then we are going to pull them to our arms. So you're just going to tighten into wrists, pull into your forearms, and just hold it. You're just going to breathe with it. Another inhale in, and then you're going to let it out and relax. So again, mentally saying relax as you let it go, and then notice the difference in your body. Notice when we're releasing this tension. So then we're going to do it with our face. So close your eyes as tightly as you can. Really shut them real tight. Squeezing, squeezing. Still breathing. Not so it hurts, but just like squeezing. And then we let it go and relax. So it's trying to remember to repeat the word relax because that's what we're doing. And we're reminding our body that we are trying to be relaxed. And then you can do one with your chest where you take a nice deep breath in and you hold it and you hold it and then relax. Last one, basically you'll point your legs out and you put it's easier if you're sitting, but you could probably do it standing just on your tippy toes. So you put your legs out, you point your feet into your toes together, heels out, toes curled under, kind of squeezing your toes. I can almost feel a cramp, so that's too tight. Like just do that, just holding it, and then let go, relax. And so the purpose of that is again, like when we're holding this tension in and then we're letting it go, it's reminding our body like, oh, I could be more tense than this. I might as well just like shake it out. Every time I do it, I always notice the tension in my shoulders. So those are ways that we can help ourselves relax. Something that combines all of these is dancing. So humans have always danced. And they've compared over 200 studies and they've noticed that dancing has the best outcomes by far for depression. It's something that is so beneficial. We can be in the moment with dancing. We've been doing it forever as humans, and it really is medicine. And so we want to be present. We want to give our children really focused attention. We also need to move our bodies, put on a song, be like, this is the dance break. At the drop of a hat, then this can be the thing that they remember from their childhood or from their summer, like, oh, I loved our dance breaks. So we can just be present in the moment and we can just get out what is stuck in our bodies. So we can be as relaxed, try to focus on breath. And sometimes we just need to shake and dance and move around. So all of that is focused on our body. However, sometimes we need to figure out how we can shift our mindset to really allow us to appreciate what we have. And gratitude is something that's wonderful for that. There are so many benefits of gratitude, and they've done so many studies and really have found that people who count their blessings are usually happier and less depressed. But they also have found that, if you're having a difficult time finding the positive, that folks with mental health concerns, this can be of benefit too. With counseling, they found that having even a brief gratitude practice is more beneficial than just counseling alone. So we can be happy, we can be optimistic. So even if we're just briefly kind of trying to be grateful, it can make a really big impact on our well-being, on our mental health, and just how we feel. So all of these benefits are really the opposite of the overwhelm that, I covered at the beginning. So say you want to practice gratitude. How? So one very simple thing is write it down. Have a gratitude list. So again, depending on what's appropriate for your child, you can write down with them, they can do it. Or maybe you both sit down and you write something you're grateful for and you put it in a jar. And at the end of the week or at the end of the month, you get to sit back and look at all the things that you're feeling so eternally grateful for. And so then you're kind of reflecting on it 2 times from when you first wrote it down and then again when you get to remember it. Another way we can practice gratitude is modeling it. So saying thank you to the lights when they turn green. Maybe you're having your dance party and your favorite song comes on. You're like, yes. Thank you, playlist of data that knows me. It's like showing gratitude for the small things. You can also show appreciation to your children, show them how to show appreciation to others. Having gratitude for the things that we often take for granted. Like we had a boil order in here just recently. It's like, I am grateful for running water and not having to boil my water before ingesting it. Being grateful for the simple moments. The sun's out, like, oh, I love the sunshine. It rains, you're like, oh, I bet the flowers love this. It's all about kind of noticing how we can appreciate what we already have. We often live life in like the black and white space, the positive or the negative, but really most of life is led really lived in the neutral. And so if we actually highlight the positives, they stick out. We keep them in mind, we remember them better. There was a study that was done with folks that have depression, and they showed them this image of a couple walking across a bridge holding hands. And the people with depression kind of asked them, like, what do you see in this picture? Or, finish the story. What do you think is happening here? Like, oh, they're walking back from a funeral, or he's going to break up with her when they get across the bridge. They ask folks who don't have depression, what do you see? Can you finish? What is happening here? And they're like, oh, they're on a date. It's like, he's going to propose. So our perception is impacting the way we see the world, of course. And if we're feeling overwhelmed or down, it's going to be more negative. So gratitude will help us focus on the positive and can make things feel brighter, even when things are rough. So another thing we can do with our children, again, including them in this, is just ask before bed, what are 3 things you're grateful for today? They can just make a list. And this is something that we can all do before bed. We're really not supposed to be on our phones, but I think we're all guilty of that often. But instead, you put that down, and as you fall asleep, you just think of 3 things that you're grateful for. I haven't seen any proof of this, but I'm sure this impacts dreams in a positive way. If the last thing your children are thinking about, or the last thing you are thinking about, are all the things that you're grateful for, it's impacting us in a very real and meaningful way. So it's a nice, simple way to kind of incorporate this. A little reframe can go a long way. So instead of I have to, we change it to I get to. So instead of, oh, I have to cook dinner, it's like I get to cook in a clean, sanitary kitchen. It's maybe not clean, but it's a kitchen. So I get to cook in a kitchen. Or it's like, oh, I have so many things to do. It's like, we get to do so much. We really have to kind of look at these reframes because we are demonstrating to our children how to be in the world. And so these simple things can really help kind of change their mindset as well. Then the last one, another really good reframe, and I'm often guilty of saying the sorry, but instead of sorry, trying to say thank you. So instead of sorry, I'm late, it can be thank you for waiting. Or instead of like, sorry, I can't make it to your party, it's like, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. So again, these simple shifts kind of bring the focus away from the negative and more towards the positive. And so then it's helping the way we think about ourselves and the experience. So instead of like, oh, sorry, I'm always late, it's like, thank you for waiting. I so appreciate that. And so again, kind of going back to this idea of like maybe the inner child, it's like you're supposed to be perfect. It's like it doesn't exist. So instead of being like, sorry, I'm like this, it's like, thank you for loving me, even though I'm like this. Maybe just a thank you. But you get it. It's really about kind of changing this to practice gratitude for ourselves and for our children as well, so that they can start having these reframes or that they can have this kind of mindset of being grateful, saying thank you. Song comes on, they're like, I want this. And so, again, if we want to be able to support their mental health as well as our own, and I know I want to give my kid the skills that I wasn't given. And so being able to build on them myself can be really, really helpful. So, what have we looked at? That self-care is not selfish. It really is very essential. A very important question to ask yourself when you are beginning to feel overwhelmed, you feel like you're triggered, you feel like you're um, getting to a point of like, this isn't happening now. You just ask, like, what age do I feel? And this can be really good information for you because, say, it's like, oh, I feel 4. And then you can start doing some of these like inner child work. It's like, okay, well, let's write a letter to 4-year-old you. It's like, what happened when you were 4? What are the things that would have been really beneficial for you to hear? What is the support you didn't get? And being able to give that. And that can help support this part of yourself so that you can be more present to yourself because you can also be more present to your children. Recognizing your own overwhelm and how it's manifesting, and then figuring out how you can park that for a moment and really be present to your children. And so sometimes we might have to be like, okay, I want to be with you in the moment, but I'm going to have to put some cold water on my face first. Or I'm going to have like, how about we start our hangouts with a dance party? Like, who's choosing the song today? And so those tip skills, remember those TIPP. So T is for temperature. We are tipping the temperature. Cold, ice water on the face, 10 to 30 seconds. You hold your breath. You either put the Ziploc bag or you put your face in the water. Even just on your eyes and cheeks, kind of just covering here. You know, if you have really cold hands like me, you maybe don't even need an ice pack or a sink. You just kind of just hang out there and it's good. The I is for intense exercise. So again, this could be your dance party, or you might literally jump up and down and shake. You might run on the spot, maybe go do some weights, do some jumping jacks, go on YouTube and find like a 10-minute HIIT class. We've got the first P, which is pace breathing. So we just want to be exhaling longer than the inhale. So the recommendation is 5 seconds inhale, 7 seconds exhale. However, figure out what works for you. And then the second P is paired muscle relaxation. So that's where we squeeze and we release. And as we release, we just say the word relax. Might even be that something you do before bed. You count your gratitude moments and then you let your muscles relax. So we'll try to find a dance party if possible, and figuring out how we can be grateful for the everyday. So I don't know if you can see that, but what are you going to do differently tomorrow? Like, what are things that you could do that can help with the overwhelm? So there's things here, but it's also figuring out what would be of benefit for you. What are things from here that you feel like you can start doing immediately? Because we have a chance to start fresh tomorrow. It's like it's a new day. We don't need to start with the overwhelm. And I mean, sometimes we do, but it's more so like, how can we be grounded and be in the moment? So I'm wondering, are there any questions from anything I just shared? Because I'm going to open it up now if anyone has anything they wanted to say or add, or anything they were wondering, because I can elaborate on anything too. Thank you for taking the time from your, busy lives. I appreciate you so much.